The dust tasted like metal as Kira dragged herself across the broken ground, her claws leaving shallow grooves in the dirt. The battlefield behind her still pulsed with fading heat, a silent grave for those strong enough to die with honor. She wasn't among them. She had been left behind, discarded. Her side ached with every movement, a burn from shrapnel that her own battalion had refused to treat. To the Vorak Dominion, a soldier who faltered was less than useless. Weakness wasn't forgiven. It was erased. She remembered the cold voice of her commanding officer as she struggled to stand after the explosion. "You slow us down. Die quietly." Then they left. No hesitation, no backward glance. The soldier she had bled with, trained beside since childhood, walked away as if she had never existed. Her breath caught painfully, but she kept crawling. The instinct to survive was not something the Vorak trained into their young. It was something they expected you to already have. If you didn't, you wouldn't live long enough to become a burden. Her vision blurred. The two moons above her smeared into pale smudges. She wiped her eyes with a trembling hand. Her fingers came away streaked with dark blue blood. A Vorak left behind was a corpse waiting to realize it was dead. She couldn't stop thinking of the words drilled into her since birth. Blood is loyalty. Blood is everything. But if that were true, why had her own bloodline left her to rot in the dirt? Why had they not even ended her suffering with a clean strike? Maybe she had never truly belonged. Maybe she had believed in a lie. The realization was heavier than the pain. A distant rumble grew louder, vibrating the ground. Engines. Not Vorak engines. They roared with a deeper, rougher tone. Her ears twitched. She knew what approached. Humans. The species her people mocked, underestimated, and called the soft-fleshed anomaly. They were supposed to be fragile, naive, weak. But the stories whispered by veterans said otherwise. Humans didn't surrender. Humans didn't break. Humans were unpredictable. Dangerous. And a wounded alien on a battlefield was an opportunity they would not ignore. Panic clawed at her chest. If they captured her, she imagined interrogation, cold tables, bright lights, demands for military codes, torture designed to peel away her will. She tried to pull herself into the shadow of a rock formation, but her limbs refused to obey. Her body had reached its limit. She collapsed, cheek pressed against the dirt, breath shallow and sharp. The engines drew closer. Doors slammed. Footsteps crunched on gravel. Voices. Human voices. Rough, unfiltered, emotional. "Got movement. Over here." "Careful. Could be a trap." Another voice, calm but edged with urgency. "Medic coming through. Give me space." Hands touched her shoulders, turning her gently. She hissed in pain, expecting harshness, restraint, something cruel. But the hands were careful, almost soft. Her eyes cracked open. A human knelt beside her, armored vest dusted with battle debris, helmet off, face streaked with fatigue but focused entirely on her. His gaze wasn't cruel, it was concerned. Hey, stay with me," he said, voice low and steady. She didn't know the words, but the tone pierced her confusion. He scanned her injuries quickly, pulling out a medical kit. She stared in disbelief. Why would an enemy tend to her wounds? The Vorak would never waste resources on a dying foe. But humans seemed to operate on a logic she didn't understand. Another soldier approached, weapon raised. "Sergeant Ross, she's Vorak. We can't..." "She's bleeding out," the human medic snapped without looking up. "I'm not letting someone die on the ground. I don't care who she is." Kara flinched. Not from fear of pain, but from shock. No one had ever said something like that about her. Not her commander, not her fellow soldiers, not even her blood family. She tried to speak, but her throat squeezed shut. Her voice came out cracked and weak. "Why? Help!" she rasped in her own language. The medic didn't understand her words, but he read the question in her eyes. He answered anyway, as if the meaning didn't need translation. "Because you're hurt, and we don't leave people behind." Her heart stumbled. People. He had called her a person, not an enemy, not a creature, a person. He applied pressure to her wound. She hissed, reflexively baring her teeth. Another soldier stepped back nervously, but the medic didn't flinch. He simply met her gaze, calm and unwavering, as if he wanted her to know he wasn't afraid of her. Not because he was stronger, but because he wasn't her enemy in this moment. "Hera," she whispered, giving him her name without knowing why. It slipped out like something fragile breaking free. He paused, surprised. Then he nodded. "Kara, I'm Daniel." He tapped his chest gently. "Daniel." The name felt strange on her tongue, human sounds mixing awkwardly with her accent, but she repeated it anyway. Neil." He smiled. Small, tired, real. She had never seen a Vorak smile. Their culture reserved expression for triumph or dominance. But Daniel's smile wasn't either. It was reassurance. Comfort. Something she had no word for. Her vision flickered. She felt herself slipping into unconsciousness. Daniel's voice echoed dimly as he lifted her into his arms. "I've got you. You're gonna be okay." No one in her life had ever said those words to her. Not once. Not even as a child struggling through brutal training. She had always been expected to endure alone. The warmth of his arms shocked her. Alien, impossible. Why would a human carry a wounded Vorak? Why risk himself? Why care? Her head rested weakly against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat. Fast, strong, steady. A human heart protecting someone who wasn't even his kind. Her last thought before darkness swallowed her was a broken whisper inside her mind. Was this what loyalty felt like? Was this what family was? Her own blood had abandoned her. But a stranger, a human, held her as if her life mattered. She let the darkness take her, not with fear, but with a strange, fragile hope she didn't know she was allowed to feel. Kara woke to the soft hum of machines and an unfamiliar warmth wrapping her limbs. The air smelled sterile, nothing like the metallic tang of Vorak medbays where the scent of pain and disinfectant always mingled. Here, the atmosphere felt calm, almost gentle. Her eyes opened slowly. She lay on a padded surface instead of metal plating, covered with a light blanket that didn't scratch her skin. Even that detail confused her. The Vorak never used comfort where function would do. She pushed herself up with a groan. Her side still ached, but the pain was dull now, muted by some foreign treatment. Tubes were attached to her arm, delivering something cool into her veins. She almost ripped them out on instinct, but stopped when she realized no one had tied her down, no restraints, no guard standing over her with contempt. She was free to move. Free, despite being an enemy. A shiver ran through her. Freedom from the Vorak usually meant exile or death. Here, it meant something else entirely. The flap of the med tent rustled, and Daniel stepped inside carrying a tablet and a cup of steaming liquid. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, but when he saw her awake, relief softened his expression. "You're up," he said with a quiet smile. "Good, you were out for almost a full cycle." Kara stared at him, trying to understand him the way she was trained to understand enemy behavior. But his face didn't hide hostility. There was no strategy in his eyes, no calculation. Just concern. A strange, disarming concern that made her chest tighten. He handed her the cup, slowly so she wouldn't flinch. "Hydration, just drink a little." She hesitated, sniffed it, then took a sip. It was warm, mildly sweet, something she had never tasted. Vorak sustenance gels were cold, bitter, and designed for efficiency, not pleasure. This drink was clearly made to comfort. Why would humans waste resources on comfort for an enemy? Her voice cracked. "Why, am I not restrained?" Daniel pulled up a crate and sat beside her. "Because you're not a prisoner." She blinked, certain she misheard. "I am Vorak." "You're also injured, scared, and far from home," he replied simply. "That's enough reason to help you." His answer made no sense. Among the Vorak, empathy was a flaw. Caring for the weak was inefficient. Allowing an enemy to live was stupidity. No logic, she understood, could explain what the humans were doing. Daniel tapped gently on the small medical pad attached to her arm. "You lost a lot of blood. We've been giving you transfusion fluid and nutrients. It'll take time for your body to replenish it. You'll be dizzy for a while." She studied the veins in her arm, confused at the sight of the small bruises from injections. She remembered screaming as a child when Vorak medics forced needles into her skin without warning. Daniel had done the same medical task, and yet somehow removed the cruelty entirely. "I do not understand humans," she muttered. Daniel chuckled softly. "Most humans don't understand humans. We just try our best." His laugh wasn't mocking. It wasn't dominance. It was friendly. She had no frame of reference for friendly interactions. Her training emphasized rank, discipline, and stoicism. Humanity seemed to operate on something much more chaotic, yet comforting. A small noise near the entrance startled her. A child, human, small, wearing oversized evacuation clothes, peeked under the med tent flap. The child held a wrinkled piece of paper clutched in their fist. Daniel motioned them in. "Hey, kiddo, you brought the drawing?" The child nodded, stepping forward shyly. They held out the paper to Kira. She took it carefully, confused by the offering. The drawing showed a crude depiction of her, blue-skinned, large-eyed, surrounded by little stick-figure humans. Above it, the child had written crookedly, "Friend." Kira's throat tightened. She didn't know how to react. No one had ever called her friend. The Vorak didn't use such a word. They used comrade, unit, or offspring of bloodline. But friend? This small human had no reason to draw her anything. No benefit, no strategy, just kindness. She handed the drawing back uncertainly, unsure if she was supposed to keep it, but the child shook their head firmly. "It's for you." Daniel smiled at the exchange. Kara stared at the child, struggling to understand why her chest felt warm, why her eyes stung. When the child left, Daniel leaned in slightly. "See, not everyone out here wants to fight you." Her voice trembled. "In Vorak culture, kindness is weakness." "Funny," he replied. "In ours, kindness is strength." His words struck her deeper than she expected. Strength through kindness? It went against everything she had been told, everything she had lived, but Daniel embodied it so effortlessly that it didn't feel like weakness at all. He helped her stand for the first time. Her legs shook violently. She hated the vulnerability in it. But Daniel didn't judge. He steadied her with one arm around her back. His touch was firm, but respectful, like he understood she didn't want to be treated delicately. "Take your time," he said. "No rush." Vorak officers would have called her pathetic for needing support. Daniel treated her like a person worth patience. As he guided her around the tent, she observed the humans more closely. A wounded soldier laughed with his comrades despite the bandages covering half his arm. Another soldier shared his meal with a civilian, even though food rations were tight. A medic comforted a crying evacuee with soothing words and gentle hands. Humans bled like any species. They suffered like any species. But unlike most, they seemed to face suffering together, with a determination to hold each other up rather than cast the weak aside. Kara whispered to herself, "Your people do not abandon their wounded." Daniel's expression softened. "Never. We take care of our own." She swallowed hard. "But I am not your own." He looked at her like she had said something absurd. "You are now. You're here. That's enough." The words stunned her. She didn't know how to accept them. Her body had been trained to expect cruelty. Her mind had been shaped to think value came only from strength. She didn't know what to do when someone offered compassion without demand. Daniel noticed her silence. "Look, you don't have to trust us yet. Just heal. That's all I want from you right now. We'll figure out the rest later." He wasn't pushing her. He wasn't demanding loyalty or gratitude. He was giving her space to feel safe, something she had never experienced. As she settled back into the cot, Daniel adjusted the blanket around her, careful not to touch her injured side. When he turned to leave, she called out softly, "Daniel?" He paused. "Why risk so much for me?" He met her gaze with a quiet intensity. "Because someone once did the same for me. And because if we stop helping others, enemy or not, then we're no better than the ones we fight." Kara lay back, absorbing his words. Her people taught that mercy was a liability, that compassion made you weak. Yet she had never seen strength like this. Not in all her years of training. Not in all the battles she had survived. She looked at the drawing left by the child, the word friend written in shaky letters. For the first time, she wondered if there was a world outside the brutality she had been born into. A world where loyalty wasn't forced but given freely. A world where a human heart could feel more like home than blood ever had. Sleep pulled at her again, but she didn't fear it this time. She drifted off, not with dread, but with the unfamiliar comfort that she was safe. Not because she was valuable,
but simply because she was alive.
Kara was stable enough to walk without support the next morning, though every step reminded her of the damage still healing inside her. Daniel insisted she take it slow, but she pushed through the discomfort. Vorak training had conditioned her to ignore pain, yet the humans had shown her she didn't have to, an idea she still didn't know what to do with. Outside the medic tent, the camp buzzed with activity. Soldiers checked equipment, civilians carried supplies, and engineers repaired damaged transports. There was exhaustion in their movements, but also determination. Humanity moved with purpose that didn't rely on fear or hierarchy. Everyone helped because they believed in something beyond themselves. That unity unsettled her. The Vorak taught that unity came from force. For humans, it came from choice. She was studying a group of soldiers sharing food when the soft chime of an incoming transmission halted the camp. Officers stopped walking. Conversations died. A comms operator sprinted toward the command tent. Kira felt the shift instantly. The air thickened with unease. Vorak ships approaching would have caused alarms, but this felt different. This was targeted. Daniel approached her, his expression unreadable but tense. "You should come with me," he said quietly. Her pulse quickened. "Why? What is happening?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he guided her toward the command tent, where several officers stood around a holo display, frowning at the incoming message repeating in harsh Vorak frequencies. Kira's stomach twisted. She recognized the cadence. A Dominion authority channel, high-ranking, uncompromising. The hologram flickered and then stabilized, revealing the face of Commander Rezik, one of the few Vorak officers feared even among their own troops. His dark eyes swept across the humans before settling on her. The disgust in his gaze cut through her like a blade. "Hera of bloodline Zorath," he snarled in their native language, "you will respond." Her throat tightened. She stood straighter despite the trembling in her limbs. "Commander, you were left behind because your failure tainted the unit, yet you survived long enough for the humans to contaminate you further." His lip curled. "You disgrace your blood." Kara lowered her eyes, old reflexes clawing their way up her spine. She felt small again, reduced to a defect, a flaw. The humans around her couldn't understand the words, but they felt the venom in his tone. Rezik continued, "The Dominion demands that you be turned over immediately. Your contamination must be cleansed." The human commander stepped forward. "She is under our care. If you are asking for a handover, present proof of diplomatic agreement." "You misunderstand." Rezik switched to the human language abruptly, his pronunciation sharp and contemptuous. "This is not a request. She belongs to us, and she will face execution for her weakness. Deliver her now." Kira's breath hitched. Execution. She expected it. She had always known this was the fate awaiting any Vorak who survived shame, but hearing it spoken so coldly in front of the humans made something inside her crack. Daniel took a single step toward her, almost imperceptible, but protective. Rezik's eyes narrowed. "You are tainted by human compassion, Kira. You allowed yourself to be rescued. You allowed yourself to be healed. You allowed yourself to be seen weak. There is no redemption for you." She felt the familiar sting of humiliation, the weight of their worldview pressing down on her. Part of her wanted to bow her head and accept the punishment. It was what she had been taught since childhood, obedience until death. But then she felt Daniel's presence beside her, steady and unwavering. His hand didn't touch her, but she sensed his readiness to shield her again if needed. "This is not your decision," the human commander said firmly. "She asked for medical assistance. We provided it. She is not property." Rezik barked a laugh. "Humans pretend to value life, yet you wage war endlessly. Hypocrites." "We fight to protect," Daniel said coldly, "not to destroy our own." Rezik's gaze snapped to him. "You dare speak to me, human?" Daniel moved in front of Kira without hesitation. "As long as she's breathing, you speak through me." The tent fell silent. Kira stared at the back of Daniel's armor, stunned. Her own people had abandoned her without a thought. Yet this human, this singular human, stood between her and the execution she had been conditioned to accept. Rezik sneered. You throw away your lives for an alien who would slit your throat were she not injured.
No, Daniel replied, voice steady. She wouldn't. Kara felt the words in her bones. He trusted her in a way no Vorak ever had. She felt her throat tighten painfully at the realization. Razik's tone turned venomous. Your softness will be your end. Hand her over, or the Dominion will reclaim her by force. Kara stepped forward before she could stop herself, voice shaking. Commander, let me return. You will not need to. No, Daniel snapped, turning toward her with a fierceness she had never seen in him. You're not going. She stared at him, eyes wide. I am Vorak. It is my fate. He shook his head. You don't owe them your death. Razik growled. She owes us everything. She is ours by blood. Kara swallowed hard. Her hands trembled. Daniel, if I stay, they will attack. Humans will die. Daniel's jaw tightened.
Then let them try. The commander glared at Daniel as if evaluating him as a threat.
You would risk war for one alien? Daniel didn't look away.
I'd risk it for one person. The word echoed through Kira's mind like a shockwave. Person. Not soldier, not alien. Person. The Vorak never saw her as anything but a tool, a replaceable cog. Daniel saw her as a life worth defending. Rezik's voice turned icy. Prepare yourself then. The Dominion does not tolerate defiance. We will take her back, even if we must burn your camp to the ground. The transmission cut abruptly. The humans exchanged grim looks. Alarms began to rise as soldiers rushed to defensive positions. Officers shouted orders. The atmosphere shifted into the tense beat before battle. Kira stood frozen, overwhelmed by the chaos she had triggered. She whispered, Daniel, I do not want your people hurt because of me. He turned to her, placing a reassuring hand over hers. Not forceful, but grounding. You didn't cause this. They did, and we're not afraid of them. You should be, she said. Vorak warriors are relentless. So are we, he replied simply. But there's one difference. They abandon you. We won't. Her chest tightened painfully. She had never been defended before. Never chosen, never protected. The Vorak said blood was loyalty, but her blood had left her to die without hesitation. Humans who owed her nothing stood by her without a second thought. Daniel met her eyes. You don't have to go back to them. Not now. Not ever. She couldn't speak. Her voice broke before any words came out. Instead, she nodded, barely, trembling. For the first time, she made a choice for herself. Not out of fear, not out of duty, but out of something new, something fragile and terrifying. She chose humanity. She chose Daniel. And as the skies rumbled with the approaching Vorak forces, she stood among the humans. Not as a captive or burden, but as someone worth defending. The first shots cut through the air like shards of metal. Kira's heart raced as the Vorak forces descended, their disciplined formations a stark contrast to the chaos of the human camp. The humans did not panic. They moved with purpose, each soldier knowing the role they would play. Daniel grabbed her hand and pulled her behind a barricade, keeping her low. She had expected humans to be fragile, disorganized, easy to crush. She had underestimated them. Their coordination was ruthless in its precision, yet careful. Not indiscriminate, not cruel. They fought to protect, not to dominate. Kara had never seen anything like it. Vorak warriors struck with honor-bound precision, predictable and unyielding. Every move could be anticipated, every tactic rehearsed. But humans adapted with a fluidity that shocked her. Barricades were shifted on the fly, defensive positions improvised mid-firefight, wounded soldiers carried to safety and immediately returned to fight. They bled, they stumbled, yet they never broke. They were strong, not because they followed orders, but because they cared. Not for glory, not for conquest, but for each other. She watched them move, their determination infectious, and she realized that strength did not only come from raw power or bloodline, it came from the heart. A Vorak warrior lunged toward a group of civilians. Kara instinctively raised her weapon, an energy rifle she had been trained to use in emergencies, and fired. The first shot hit, not lethally, but enough to stop him. The Vorak froze, eyes narrowing at her betrayal. Kara felt a thrill she hadn't expected. Not of triumph, but of purpose. Her hands didn't shake, her aim didn't falter. For the first time, she fought not for obedience, not for honor, not for blood, but for someone else. People who had given her a choice. Daniel stumbled, a bright streak across his side. She screamed and ran to him, ignoring the debris and fire that surrounded them. She lifted him off the ground, moving him behind cover. His eyes met hers, calm despite the pain. "Kira," he said, voice steady. "I'm fine. Focus on them. Protect everyone." She nodded, understanding instantly. This was not just a battle for survival. It was a battle for principles. For every life in this camp, for every trust they had given her, for every heartbeat that mattered, she was no longer a tool. She was a defender. She was a shield. She was human in purpose, even if not in flesh. The Vorak commander roared, rallying his troops. "She fights for humans! She has betrayed us all!" His voice carried over the battlefield, sharp and filled with fury. Kira met his gaze, her own eyes blazing with resolve. "If loyalty means cruelty," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos, "then I choose humanity." The Vorak hesitated. She had always been taught that defiance ended quickly, crushed under discipline or fear. But the humans did not flinch. They did not retreat. They moved as one, a tide of resolve. She ran alongside Daniel, firing at Vorak soldiers who sought to break through their defenses. Her training made her efficient, but the humans gave her something else. Strategy, improvisation, instinct, sharpened by trust and collaboration. She felt a connection she had never known. She was not alone, and yet she was part of something larger than herself. A flash of light passed overhead as a Vorak aerial unit strafed the camp. Humans leapt into position, shielding civilians, returning fire with coordinated volleys. Kira crouched beside Daniel, catching her breath. Her mind was clear, her hands were steady, her heart for the first time aligned with her purpose. She realized she would fight not because she was forced, but because she wanted to protect. This was strength unlike any she had known. This was honor beyond blood. This was humanity. One Vorak soldier broke through the perimeter and charged toward Daniel, weapon raised. Kira acted before thinking, throwing herself in front of him, deflecting the attack with her rifle. Sparks flew. Pain shot through her arm as the energy shield absorbed the blow, but she didn't care. Daniel rolled behind cover, safe. She gritted her teeth and fired, hitting the Vorak squarely in the chest, stopping him cold. He glared at her, a mixture of disbelief and fury. She did not hesitate. She fired again, this time wounding him enough to retreat. Her aim, precise and controlled, was fueled by a singular determination: protect those who had protected her. The Vorak commander's eyes burned with disbelief. His rigid tactics were failing against adaptability and compassion. His soldiers hesitated, confused by humans who did not simply obey orders but acted for each other. Kira felt a surge of empowerment. Her body moved with purpose she had never experienced under Vorak discipline. Her mind was sharp, her instincts tuned not to follow, but to anticipate. She was no longer a pawn. She was a force, guided by the values she had chosen. Daniel, despite his injuries, joined her at the barricade. "You're doing well," he said, voice strained but encouraging. "Keep moving. Don't stop." Her chest burned with adrenaline. She raised the rifle again, covering civilians retreating behind a makeshift wall. A Vorak soldier leaped from the rubble, snarling, weapon poised. Kira aimed and fired with deadly accuracy. The soldier staggered, eyes widening in shock, and fell back. For a moment, silence. Then another soldier came, and another. Kira fired relentlessly, her rhythm synchronized with the humans around her. They moved as one organism, adapting, protecting, and striking back. She understood for the first time what it meant to fight not just for survival, but for something greater than herself. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. Smoke filled the air. Sparks danced from damaged vehicles and energy blasts. Vorak forces, relentless yet rigid, began to falter. Their formations broke under the humans' adaptive tactics, their precision outmatched by ingenuity and cooperation. Kira's own strength grew, not just from training, but from purpose. Every life she saved, every threat she neutralized, reinforced the truth she had felt since Daniel first lifted her from the battlefield. Blood abandoned her, but the human heart would not. She was not just surviving. She was becoming part of something stronger than herself, something worth defending with every ounce of strength she possessed.
As the last Vorak soldiers retreated under the combined force of human strategy and sheer determination, Kira lowered her rifle, chest heaving. Daniel leaned against the barricade, bleeding but alive. She knelt beside him, checking his injuries. For the first time, she felt a profound connection not to her species, but to humanity itself. Her training, her instincts, her entire life of rigid discipline had prepared her to fight. But this willingness to protect without expectation, this choice to fight for others, was something no Vorak had ever taught her. She had found it in humans. She looked at the horizon, where the Vorak ships disappeared into the distance, and realized something that no lesson, no battle, no blood oath could have taught her. Loyalty, courage, and strength were not measured by survival alone, but by the heart that chose to protect. She had been abandoned by blood, but she had been adopted by humanity's relentless, unyielding compassion, and she would never turn away from it.
The battle was over, and the echoes of conflict lingered like smoke clinging to the air. Kira surveyed the aftermath with a strange mixture of exhaustion and awe. Human medics moved swiftly, tending to the wounded with practiced care. Soldiers who had moments ago been locked in combat now lifted debris, carried supplies, and comforted civilians. Even the Vorak survivors, those who had been captured or injured, were treated with medical attention. Kira's chest tightened as she watched, the contrast with her own people's merciless code stark and undeniable. Humanity did not conquer solely to dominate. They healed, they nurtured, they protected. Even enemies, even strangers. She had been raised to believe that mercy was weakness, but here, mercy was the strongest weapon of all. Daniel lay against a makeshift cot, bandages wrapped tightly around his side. Despite the pain, he smiled faintly when he saw her approach. "You made it," he said simply. She knelt beside him, her fingers brushing the dirt and soot from his uniform. "I had to," she whispered, voice thick. "If not for you, if not for them, I would have returned." He shook his head. "You didn't owe anyone that. You're not obligated to die for anyone's expectations but your own." His hand rested on hers briefly, a grounding touch she had come to trust. "You chose to fight. That's what matters." Her throat tightened. Choice. The word tasted foreign, yet empowering on her tongue. Vorak life offered no such thing. Everything had been dictated by bloodlines, commands, and ritual. Every act had a purpose imposed from outside. Here, for the first time, she had chosen for herself, and the choice had not been easy. It had been terrifying. And yet, in that choice, she had found a strength she could never have imagined. The camp was quieting now. Survivors regrouped, civilians and soldiers alike sharing relief and exhaustion. Kira stood, her legs still weak but steady. She moved to help a group of Vorak soldiers who had been captured, their weapons taken, injuries severe. Their faces were etched with confusion, disbelief at the treatment they were receiving. They had expected death, or at least humiliation. Instead, they found medical attention and calm words. Kira assisted silently, adjusting bandages and offering water. The work was small, but each act felt monumental. For the first time, she was contributing not as a tool, but as a person. Daniel approached again, leaning on a staff for support. "The command has been working on paperwork for your asylum," he said, his tone matter-of-fact. "You don't have to go back. The humans are willing to adopt you formally under our protection." Kara froze. Adopted. The word was alien, yet it resonated deeply. Blood had abandoned her. Family had turned its back. Her species had left her to die on the battlefield without a second thought. And now, humans, strangers in every sense, were offering her life, acceptance, protection, and a place in their world. Her throat tightened again as tears threatened to fall. I don't know what to say," she admitted. "You don't need to say anything," Daniel replied, his eyes meeting hers with quiet understanding. "Just know that you have a choice. You can stay, you can fight with us, you can live. You don't owe them, and you don't owe me. But I hope you choose humanity." Her gaze shifted to the remnants of the battlefield. Broken machinery, smoldering debris, and scattered bodies bore witness to the horrors she had endured. And yet, the same scene showed resilience, determination, and care. Humans were not perfect. They had scars, mistakes, and losses, but they had values that transcended survival. They had heart. They had courage not only in war, but in compassion. Kira realized that she had been searching for that strength her entire life, even when she thought it lay in bloodlines or honor. It had been here, in these humans, all along. She stood taller, drawing a deep, steadying breath. "Then I choose," she said softly, her voice gaining strength with each word. "I choose humanity." Daniel's smile widened, relief evident in the faint curve of his lips. "Welcome, Kira," he said. "You're safe. You're one of us now." A weight lifted from her chest that she hadn't even realized she had been carrying. She removed the Vorak insignia burned into her armor and handed it to Daniel. "I leave this behind," she said. "It no longer defines me. My people abandoned me, but I have found something better." Daniel nodded solemnly. "You carry something stronger than insignias or bloodlines now. You carry choice, courage, and compassion. That is what matters." Kira looked around the camp, taking in the humans, soldiers, medics, civilians, each moving with purpose and care. Their faces reflected exhaustion, yet they smiled, laughed, and reassured each other. They were tired, but they did not falter. Their strength was not imposed by tradition or fear. It was chosen, and it was contagious. She felt herself grow taller, her confidence solidifying. This was her new family. These were her people. She belonged. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the camp in shades of gold and crimson, Kira felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. She had faced the cruelty of her species, the cold logic of her commanders, and the weight of betrayal from her own blood. Yet she had survived, not just because of skill, but because humans had shown her a different kind of strength, one that combined heart and action, courage and empathy. It was a strength she could embrace freely, without fear, without shame. Daniel rested on the cot, finally allowing himself a moment of reprieve. Kira knelt beside him, adjusting a blanket across his shoulders. "You risked yourself for me," she said quietly. "I will never forget that." "You don't have to," he replied, voice gentle. "Just carry it forward. Protect others when you can. That's what matters." Kira's eyes glistened. She had learned what loyalty meant. Not blind obedience, not adherence to blood, not submission to authority, but a conscious choice to protect, to care, to stand for what was right. She had been abandoned by blood, but adopted by a human heart. That heart had given her life, hope, and purpose. She looked toward the horizon again, where the stars began to emerge against the darkening sky. Her body was weary, her mind still processing everything that had happened, but her spirit felt unbreakable. She knew she had found more than survival. She had found a calling, a new path forged, not by lineage or expectation, but by choice and compassion. She would fight for these humans, for the principles they embodied, and for the promise that no life would be abandoned when she could stand and protect it. As night fell, the camp quieted. Fires burned softly, illuminating faces full of hope and relief. Kira stood among them, not as an outsider, not as a burden, not as a defeated alien, but as someone reborn. She breathed deeply, feeling the weight of the past lift with each exhale. Humanity had taken her in when no one else would. They had shown her that courage and compassion were not contradictory. They were inseparable. She had been abandoned by blood, yes, but she had been adopted by the heart that mattered most, and in that truth, she had found herself. Her final thought, whispered to no one in particular, carried a sense of quiet triumph. "I am no longer lost. I am human, by choice, by heart, and by strength, and I will never turn back."